somewhat very awkward, somewhat very reluctant to accept, although that's the truth. How can we transcend our methodological nationalism? How can we imagine order beyond our own nation state, our own society? What happened? The international relations between China and Korea after Korean Peninsula was reunified. A couple of minutes ago, I told you that's just wishful thinking of Korean people. Actually, we exert no effort to reunify our country, right? What did the president do, Myeongbak-Ri regime? What did they do in order to promote Korean reunification or reconciliation? Actually, they did nothing. They have some preconditions. If North Korea give up the nuclear programs and they try to accept South Korean proposal, we will help them. North Korean regime never accepted that kind of proposal. So what happened? Nothing happened, and North Korean regime is getting closer to Chinese regime, the mainland China. I told you, South Korean people have the assumptions. If North Korean regime collapses, we will reunify our country, Korean Peninsula, under one nation. As far as I know, that's just our dream. That kind of thing will never happen. For one thing, North Korean regime, they will not give up. I think they can persist. I still remember when I was in the US, there was one report from the US CIA. The title of that report is very impressive. From 3 days to 3 years. There are many speculations during the after the death of North Korean leader Kim Il-sung, and there was a great famine that struck North Korea. And the US, the CIA, they speculated North Korean regime will collapse within 3 days to 3 years. That report was in the middle of 1990. But this is 2012. Just wide of the mark. In the US, when I read many books and reports and articles about the North Korea, written about North Korea, they just misunderstand and underestimate North Korean regime. I told you that it's my variable. There are many North Korean refugees, defectors, and so South Korean news, they think the North Korean regime will collapse sooner or later, but the collapse itself is a kind of a given factor. I don't think so. When you have some vacation in the seashore, when you have chances to have some play with mud, if you have mud in your hand, if you squeeze, some mud is squeezed out of your own fist, right? But when you open your fist again, in your own palm, in your own hand, the mud in your hand is stronger than ever. I think that's the situation in North Korea. I'm not saying the North Korean regime is legitimate or the North Korean regime has strong power to control their people. I'm not saying that. This is just a kind of episode, kind of analogy. So if you think there are so many defectors from North Korea, you think of them the sign of North Korean pending collapse. I don't think so. So I don't agree with you. North Korean regime will collapse. I don't buy that opinion. And second, if they really do, we don't have any privileges to power to overtake North Korea. the China will not let South Korea to do that. And second, the US will not allow us to do that. I told you during the Korean War, when you occupy northern part of Soviet parallel, Syngman Lee, the president at that time, South Korean president, dispatched our own governors and mayors to northern area. Do you know what happened? The UN forces, under the leadership of the commandership of the US generals, they just expelled the South Korean governors and mayors. North Korea is not your own territory. You have no sovereignty above Soviet power. That's the official position of US. US will not allow us to occupy or govern North Korea. That's only within our own brain. North Korea is, we are the same nation, and North Korea, the Korean Peninsula is one nation. Based upon our own memory, not real politics, real effort. During this class, I want to, enlarge your horizon, and I want to just bring you to confront reality, not your own dream or imagination. So, against your own question, I don't think so. They will not, North Korean regime will not sooner or easily collapse. I don't think so. If they did, South Korea has no power to overtake North Korea. South Koreans, South Korean people, South Korean politicians, South Korean military, and South Korean intellectuals, we don't have idea or preparations to do that. In Chinese, the US, they have their own stake. They invested. If you really want to reunify our country, we should do something. Time is not our side, I think. We are just wasting valuable time. For me, when someone is talking about what happened after collapse of the North Korean regime, or what happened after we unify Korean Peninsula, the relationship between Korea, what kind of relationship between Korea and China, Korea and Japan, Korea and Russia, and Korea and US. I don't think that kind of thing to happen. Why? That's history. That's power politics. You don't know anything about history, anything about international politics. All you have is just your wishful thinking. Just like a child or baby. I want to have this. Your parents or some of the elders will do that for some time. But when you're of age, they ask you to, hey, wake up. You are in your own dreams. I'm sorry, I'm telling you the truth. Very awkward. And to make things worse, when you pay your attention to the statistics, how many Korean people, South Korean people, really want to unify Korean Peninsula? The percentage is getting lower and lower. In the past, when I was your age, it's almost 90% of people, they think they wish reunification. 80%, 70%, now it's around 60%. 4 out of 10 don't want reunification. Why? There are propaganda, there are some informations. North Korea is really a very poor country. If we reunify, we have to support them, So we need lots of money to support our poor neighbor, poor relatives. So the younger generation, the rational human being, rational South Korean people, don't like that idea. Why should we pay that money to save the North Korean people? That's what happened in your own brain. So the percentage is getting lower. So let me ask you, if South Korean people don't like the idea of reunifying Korean Peninsula, North Korean people, the North Korean regime is not that soft or not that fragile to collapse by themselves. And the international powers surrounding Korea, the US, China, Japan, and Russia, they don't like the idea South Korea has the privileges to overtake North Korea when North Korean regime collapses. Our subjective power and intention and our objective power relations surrounding Korean Peninsula, subjective, objective dimensions, they are all against us. Very hostile for South Korean to unify Korean Peninsula. How could we? How could you unify our country? That's just wishful thinking. Questions?
I agree with you that it's not realistic that reunification will be happening soon, but we do have a ministry that's taking over the matters between North and South Korea, and we do have policies that's regarding some kind of exchanges economically and culturally and stuff like that. So do you think that we should stop trying to do that kind of policies that would help reunification in the future?
I'm totally agree with you. The main point is we should do something. Just dreaming. Do something. I'm asking you, what did they do? And all through this MBA administration, what did they do to make any relationships with North Korea? They just break all the relationships with South Korea, whether governmental level or just civil society level. How could we prepare ourselves for reunifying our country, our peninsula, our nation? Actually, we are doing nothing. Just to remind you, I want to remind you that all through this class, I emphasized the concept, event. Structure is nothing. Through event, we can structuring our own, not only our own social structure, but our global world structure, international relations. We can restructure the US-Korea relationships, China-Korea relationships, North-South relationships. That's my point. We should do something. That's my point. You should have done something. What you never did. I want to ask a Chinese student, your vision of reunifying Taiwan. I have many Taiwanese friends, and they have very different stories. But I want to, when I visit China, I want to hear from you your vision of reunification with Taiwan. In Korea, I think you are not familiar with the stories. I'm just paying the attention to the dimensions, international and transnational dimensions of Korean history. How Korea got liberated from Japanese colonial rule. How we could survive during Korean War. How could we industrialize our country after the Korean War? How could we democratize our country under the dictatorial regime? How we could succeed in making information society and individual society. We call our modernity compressed modernity. What compressed means? It's kind of like this. So when we compare 100 years of Western time, we compare that 30 years in Korean time. That means all the social transformation which occurred during 100-year term, we just experienced, we just transformed within one generation, 30 years. The 30 years in Western experience, Western time is compared to 1 decade, just 10 years in Korea. That's the meaning of compressed modernity. I will tell you the stories. What does it mean, the one generation? 30 years. What does it mean, the 30-year, one generation? What's the generational gap means? This is one generation means you have your own baby. When you are 30 years old, you have your own baby, right? That's the meaning of a generation. Generational gap means the gap between your own age and your own children. Although, you fight, you killed each other, in your generation, your children's generation, they don't share the same experience. Although their parents are saying that all their own experiences, it's not their own experiences. That's just indirect experiences. They hear from their own parents or their own teachers or through their textbooks. But actually they have no idea what happened in the past. But in Korea, the 30-year term means in Korea just one decade, 10 years. That means in Korea it's very hard to understand what happened in the past because we are living in the same age. When you have chances to come down to southern parts of Korean peninsula and in Jeju Island, you find very strange things to happen. In one village, they have the same morning. The villagers, they got killed at the same day. So all the descendants, the boys and girls of that dead people, they mourn their own ancestors same day because they got killed. So, in your same village, you know who killed your father, who killed your uncle. So it's very hard in the living in Korea, either in North or South Korea. You know very well. The Korean War, which broke out June 25th. During the Korean War, we killed more than 1 million people with each other, North and South Korea. Korean War was remembered, was very distinctive in that it's not just the soldiers. Most civilians got killed during that war. It's not just a war between two armies. They're not only killing the enemies, but the civilians in the occupied territory. That's the tragedy of Korean War. Let me tell you another example. In 1946, in North Korea, they had land reform. North Korea. So for the first time in the Korean so-called 5,000 years of history, North Korean peasants, North Korean farmers, tillers, for the first time in their life, they got their own land. The problem. They really appreciate the leadership of Kim Il-sung. That's the reason why during the Korean War they never surrender. They side with North Korean regime because they had something to defend. What I want to say is, when they confiscated the land and distributed the land to the tillers for nothing, if you're a landowner, landlord, when the government confiscated your own land, what happened to you? You cannot live in North Korea. You run away from your own villages, come down to South Korea. My own parents came down from North Korea, from Hamgyong province. My father is a very small boy, but when you come down after you got lost all your fortunes, belongings, as you have nothing but your own body, and you took refuge to South Korea. When you came down to South Korea, what would you bring with yourself? What kind of stuff will you take with you? The documents certifying the ownership of the land. Although they confiscate your land, you cannot bring your own land, but you can bring that document certifying you are the owner of that land before the land reform in North Korea. You bring that with you, and you give it to your own son. Do you know what happened after the East and West Germany reunified? All the ownership of land and factory before the communist occupation of East Germany, they recovered the ownership of the land and factory after the reunification. That happened in Germany. So think about that. If Korean Peninsula got reunified by the initiative of South Korea, all the North Korean refugees before the Korean War and during Korean War, they tried to recover their ownership of that house, land, and the factories. Do you think what happened? Let me ask you, this is just a mental experiment. If you left behind in North Korea lots of land and fortunes, if any South Korean leader, whether he is president or anybody, try to peacefully, through negotiation with North Korea, to reunify Korean Peninsula, do you think Do they agree with that negotiation? If reunify through negotiation, through dialogue with North Korean regime, we should have some deals with North Korea. What I'm saying is the real problem. In order to prepare ourselves to reunification, we should do our own homework. What should we do after reunification? Do we have to persuade them to give up the land ownership? Or ask North Korean government and North Korean people to return that land and that fortunes, although it's more than 2 generations ago? What do you think is the right thing to deal with that problem? Who do you think will prepare for the solution? The US? South Korean government? North Korean government? The landowners themselves? That's our job. We should prepare ourselves for that kind of problems. And one other thing, we can, when we review the document, we can trace back who occupied the area, who led that army, and who killed our ancestors. We can identify who is the leader of that military. Could we, forgive them? Who have the power to ask them to forgive? I'm just telling you that truth. We killed each other, not just hundreds or thousands, millions. Whenever we talk about national reunification, as if we did nothing, no brutalities, no atrocities, we are just the same blood, and all we have to do is just to get rid of that DMG and just to reunify our own families. No, that's not the image of reunification. Certainly, we just confront the reality. Whether you understand, whether you imagine, whether you really want to know. You are living in this real world, not your imagined or world of your own creation. You are living, you are confronting the real world. People have died for you, whether you appreciate that or not. People shed their blood. They are not just Koreans. They are Americans. They are Chinese. North Koreans, South Koreans. So when you think about the reunification, don't think that, it's a kind of gift from outside or from above. All we have to do is just whether to take that or not. Oh no, that kind of thing never happened. We should prepare ourselves. That's history. That's the reason I want to draw your attention to this international, transnational dimensions, understanding our social world. That's the reason why I ask you to transcend, overcome the methodological nationalism. Korean society is not the same as Korea as a nation state. Page 145, Constructivism. It's very hard to understand this textbook and this part. You should have some pre-understanding of the IR theories. What happened in the IR theories before and after the Cold War. And now is the era, post-Cold War. After 9/11's terrorist attack, the international relations theory changed a lot. That's the post-Cold War era. Let me just focus on this constructivism. This book was written in 2000, almost 12 years ago. And constructivism. Introduction. The purpose of this chapter is not to provide an exhaustive account of the various theories of the state found throughout the already burgeoning constructivist literature. Constructivist literature, there are so many books and articles about constructivism. Given that new variants are only now emerging, my purpose must be more modest. Here I present three distinct theories of the state, which cover many, though not all, of the variants found in the extant constructivist literature. Unlike previous chapters, I shall begin with a general introduction to constructivism before proceeding to examine three key variants and their approach to the state. Constructivism versus rationalism. In the past, IR scholars, IR means international relations theory, international relations. They just briefly symbolize IR. IR scholars have tended to divide IR theory into three competing schools: liberalism, pluralism, realism, and Marxist structuralism, or realism, liberalism, and critical theories. But the rise of constructivism reconfigures the traditional trichotomy into a dichotomy, comprising constructivism on the one hand and rationalism or neo-utilitarianism on the other. So after the Cold War system collapsed, the trichotomy narrowed down to dichotomy from realism, liberalism, Marxism to rationalism and constructivism. Constructivism is the newly emerging agenda. Constructivists begin by arguing that rationalist theory, not to be confused with the English school of rationalism, has been excessively materialist and agent-centric. What is the opposite of materialistic? Materialistic. In our textbook, first textbook, how could Philip Abrahams contrast materialistic approaches to what? What is the opposition of materialistic approaches? Materialistic. Do you remember I once challenged you? You are all materialist. You cannot think about this social world order or the social relationship except for the money. I have many shocking moments when I got questions from my own student. What is your total salary? One of my students asked me about that. It's really a shock to me. One of my students asked me, how much money do you want? As a professor, well, what's your salary? She had no, interest in my own scholarship, my own expertise, or my own research agenda, my own problematic, my own vision, or my own value. The student, the female student, has only interest in my earnings, my salary. That's the way she could estimate my value. You are what you earn. I got really shocked. If money is the most important thing, the valuable thing, I will never have the professorship. My maternal grandfather is a businessman. If I followed his road, now I become not a Zuckerberg, not Steve Jobs, or who is the guy that Bill Gates. I should become a billionaire. But I never charted my course on that. Because money is not everything. Money is not even something. I'm studying very hard, to find some ways. If we want to find new roads, new paths to reunify our country without any more blood. What kind of effort should we exert? Do you think that has no value at all? If you have lots of money, you can buy some solutions. Anyone can give you the answers. Money can do that. Never. Only people who don't have any ideas or any values to pursue, they pursue money. I'm somewhat idealistic, ideational. You guys are materialistic, although you are much younger than me. You think of this world, the social world, human being, the value of the human being, just the money they got. Rational theory has been excessively materialist and agent-centric. For rationalists, IR appears as the product of agents. Usually the agent equals the state, which are imbued with instrumental rationality. That is, states always rationally pursue their power or utility maximizing preferences or interests. For rationalists, state preferences are unproblematic. They are exogenously formed and are based on a power maximizing rationality. By this, they mean that states begin with a portfolio of specific interests prior to social interaction. However, the claim that rationalist IR theory tends to be overly agent-centric is, I would argue, much too bold and sweeping, as I have argued throughout the book. Though it should be noted that not all constructivists make this claim. The point that many constructivists seek to establish is that states are far more constrained than materialist theory recognizes. For constructivists, states are constrained by social normative structures. One of the fundamental givens in materialist theory is the claim that states, or power actors more generally, know exactly what their interests are, and they know how to realize them. But this is the key point. For constructivists, states do not a priori know what their interests are. Most importantly, constructivists argue that the identities of states are constructed through norms, which in turn define a state's particular interests. As norms reconstruct identities, so interests subsequently change, leading on to changes in state policy. Let me explain this. I apply this to Korean contemporary history. All through the years when Syngman Lee reigned, from 1948 to 1960, when his regime collapsed after the rigged elections and after the student uprising, he exiled to Hawaii. All through the 12 years of reign, what Syngman Lee, the so-called founding father of South Korea, he pursued is national reunification through war. After the Second World, the Korean War, he visited the U.S. He made a public speech in the joint session of the U.S. Congress. You can find his speech at the time. In that speech, he argued that during the Korean War, so many innocent blood was shed. I'm not asking the U.S. soldiers to come to Korea to shed their blood, invaluable blood again. I'm asking President Syngman Lee asked the U.S. congressional leaders, all I'm asking you is to supply us logistics, bullets, guns, tanks, and fighters, jet fighters, and destroyers. If you equip us with enough weapons, we will fight till the end. After the public address, he delivered to the joint session of the U.S. Congress, the U.S. public opinion turned against Syngman Lee. Before that time, they think of Syngman Lee as the leader from the frontline anti-communist country. They are there, try to defend this free world. But when he was in the US, he revealed his true identities. I will reunify our country. I'm not asking you another round of blood. I'm asking you weapons. We will do that ourselves. So did they really got impressed? The US people, the US political leaders and the military leaders, they got really impressed? Do they decide to send Korea enough weapons to fight against North Korea? No, they don't. So there are many times Syngman Lee sent letters to US president. This is the best chance to attack North Korea. And it's not a secret at all. The documents released more than 20 years ago. The US has some contingency plans. The title of that plan is Plan Ever Ready. If Syngman Lee give that order to attack North Korea, a couple of seconds later, there would be military coup against Syngman Lee. And the military generals, they will take over the government. That's the plan. All the senior generals at the time, 1950s, they knew that plan. After the coup in 1961, Park Chung-hee, he led the national. His national goal is not the national reunification. His goal is to modernization, economic development of South Korea. That really is a huge change, sea change in Korean policy. Syngman Lee, all through his reign, he think of Korea as a battlefield. Without finishing, without reunifying Korean Peninsula, there could be no economic development, no democracy, no freedom. That's what Syngman Lee is thinking about. Syngman Lee is a realist. March north is his slogan all through his reign. March north. The US tried to deter him. They call it the dual containment. The US stationed their troops not only to deter another round of attack from North Korea, but also South Korean attack about North Korea. They call it the dual containment. The US soldiers are here not only to defend South Korea from North Korean attack, but also deterring another round of war initiated by South Korea. That's reality. But that kind of thing never happened. So the intellectuals and the pundits, they just criticize, the March North slogan is just a kind of domestic use. Syngman Lee actually has no intention, no capacity, but to threaten, intimidate, and strengthen his own power base in South Korea for domestic politics. He's just faking, March North. But actually it's not. Syngman Lee really mean it. He's a realist. So the US generals, they really like, almost worship Syngman Lee. Syngman Lee really is their friend. Run the risk of the blood of their own soldiers, own people, not the American soldiers. Let me ask you, if South Korean soldiers were less than enough to defend our country, how could the South Korean army, South Korean President Park Chung-hee can dispatch Korean troops to Vietnam? Let me ask you once again. If 600,000 South Korean army is not enough to defend our country, South Korea, how could Park Chung-hee dispatch troops to Vietnam to support US war effort there? In the beginning of the Korean War, the size of Korean South Korean army is around 100,000 people. At the end of the Korean War, it's more than 600,000 soldiers. Doubled, tripled, quadrupled, 6 times bigger than when you compare the size of Korean army after the Korean War. It's 6 times bigger than the initial size. Japan, they gave up the arming themselves. So the troop size of South Korean army is not just try to defend South Korea alone, but defend Asia in general, including Japan, Taiwan, and South Vietnam. That's the reason why we have that amount of army. How we could afford to dispatch troops to Vietnam. So I have questions in mind. Now we are living in very technologically advanced world. If another round of war occur between North and South Korea, do you think we have chances to fight fist to fist with North Korean soldiers? We never. It is not the size of our troops, how our army got equipped, our strategic bombing, how the advanced artillery, that really matters. So we still keep that size, 600,000 armies. My question is very simple. After the Korean War, aside from the combat war with North Korea, how many Korean soldiers got dead after the end of Korean War until now? I think you cannot even imagine. The figure, the statistics dramatically just decreased after the democratization in 1987. If I'm a parent, I will not let my own son to join that kind of army. Every year, not just several, not just tens, not just hundreds. More soldiers got dead after they joined the army. That's the reality. Let me repeat. After the Korean War, not dead during the warfare. After the Korean War, how many Korean soldiers dead? You can trace. When you get that figure, I can bet, I can dare to say, you got really upset, surprised. The identities of the state changed. Park Chung-hee, as a soldier, as a general, he realized the realities of Korean Peninsula. The US has the nuclear warhead, the Soviet Union had. He knew very well. We cannot go another round of war. That means total destruction of this peninsula. There is no winner at all. So he changed our state identities from national reunification, our state policy from national reunification to national modernization. Changed our state identities. Changing the identities means changing our national interest, national goal, national policy. So you cannot blame Syngman Lee for not developing our economy. That's not his goal. His national identity, state identity is unified Korea, not divided. All through his reign, he devoted himself to that goal, national reunification. So whenever the U.S. consultant aid, they asked Syngman Lee, we cannot support you forever, so you should develop economies and you should support yourself. You should have some self-reliant kind of economies. Syngman Lee always got infuriated. we defend yourself. We are not defending South Korea. We defend Japan. We defend US. You guys should supply us weapons, food, and moral support too. We are in the front line. You owe us. We are here. This DMZ is not just defending Korean sovereignty, Korean national security, but the security of all free world, including Japan and the US. He is very, stubborn. He never say, sorry or thank you for your help, your aid. You owe us something. We deserve that amount of money and food, the weapons. That's his perception of that world, his era. But in 1958, the US deployed the warheads in Korean soil, Korean peninsula. As a general, I think Park Chung-hee should have known that. He knew that very well. So the Korean national security is somewhat guaranteed. No more round of conventional war. So now it's time we should change our national goal from national reunification to national development. That's the beginning of the era of the so-called rush to development. Syngman Lee never changed it, never even imagined change our goal. Park Chung-hee changed our state identity. So, state interest, state policy. So he can pursue economic development, modernization. It's a kind of a switch. Before you join the university, you can think, all you should do is just having higher grade. After you join, you can just follow the lead. You have some better grade. That could be your goal all through your university days. But when you join this university and you change your own goal, you should try hard to help have-nots or some miserable or some handicapped people. You can change. You can set your new charters, new goals. You can change your identities. If you change your identities, you can redefine your own goal, your own interest. You should pursue different way of living. That's what constructivists are talking about. National identities, national interests are not given, not pre-given. You should construct your national interest, national identity before you should try to defend your own country. Thank you.